Hello again, everybody. I'm Henry T. Welcome to Henry T. GameFace Live. Such a thrill to be here on Monday and Wednesday with you to bring back all these great athletes and superstars of literally every subject matter is what we've done over the past. And we're going to do it. If you have a suggestion, you you want to be on the show, you have something to say, call me right here. Today we remember a young man who is regarded as New Mexico's greatest tennis player ever, undefeated New Mexico tennis player, undefeated to New Mexico competition, an outstanding young man, great scholar, great son, great brother, great friend, greatness in every capacity, super character. And today we bring on his mother, beautiful mom in every way, Minerva, and his former coach and close friend, David Gaetz. Here is that story about Mike Velasquez. Let's bring Minerva and David Gaetz up in the spring. There's Coach David Gaetz. Still looks like a teenager. You're supposed to get older, not younger, Coach. How are you today?
I'm doing fine, Henry. Nice to see you again.
Good. And we're going to have you tilt your camera just a little bit as we introduce Minerva Velasquez, the mom of Michael. And Minerva, welcome to the Henry T. Show. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. And good morning.
Good morning to you.
Thank you so much, Henry. It's a pleasure to be with you. It
wow,
really is.
You're out there in beautiful, sunny California, and Dave is in winter wonderland. And today in Albuquerque, it's freezing cold here and snowing. So you're under the sunshine. It's snowing in Albuquerque. What's the weather report in Pennsylvania, Dave?
Not snowing, but it's not nice. Oh, I don't know. It's maybe 50 degrees. Not bad.
Not bad at all. Let's start with you, Dave, describing, and I'll refer to you as coach. Anybody that's a coach, I refer to them as coach. It's like a doctor. You've earned the title. So, Coach Gaetz, how did you meet Michael Velasquez?
I just in tournaments, and I knew Mike probably when he was 11, 12 years old, and you'd see this little kid, and people were already talking about him. And Albuquerque is a small enough tennis community that everybody knows everybody. And so I would be going to tournaments, and I'd hear about, hey, you should watch this kid. This kid's unbelievably good. And I started watching Mike, and we started playing together when he got older, and we played in tournaments a few times. We used to practice together. I recruited him as the tennis coach in New Mexico. It was one of the happiest days of my life when Mike Velasquez signed to play for the University of New Mexico, and I knew I was going to be his tennis coach for the next 4 years.
What kind of talent did Michael literally have?
Everybody in the world today, it seems like in entertainment, there's a tendency to exaggerate, but I would not be exaggerating one bit if I told you I think the kid's the most talented tennis player I've ever seen. The guy that's equal to Mike, I think, I played John McEnroe, and McEnroe had the same level of talent that Mike did. But those two guys, in my mind, the kid was so good. It was unbelievable how good he was. You name it, and he had it. And plus, he had smarts. He just wasn't a ball hitter. He's 16 years old, and he just saw the whole court, and he knew what to do, and he'd mix up shots. He wouldn't overpower you. The kid was the most talented tennis player I've ever seen in 40 years of coaching.
My goodness, you've had hundreds, thousands of players come before you, and you give that compliment to Mike Velasquez of Albuquerque, New Mexico?
Yep, 100%. I've had kids that play. I coach kids that made the Davis Cup team. I've worked with kids that have been top 50 in the world. He was the best.
My goodness, that's amazing. I can't believe I'm hearing that compliment. Now, when I think of being up there with McEnroe, I think of Yvonne Lindell, Bjorn Borg, Jimmy Connors, Elena Stasi. That's the elite of the players that ever played the game, and you put him right there.
He could have been there. He needed a little bit more opportunity. You know, it's not a knock against Albuquerque, but to be a great professional tennis player come out of Albuquerque is tough because it's a mile high. You don't have all that competition to play with on a daily basis that you need. There's not enough tournaments, the sections. There's a lot of reasons why it's hard in Albuquerque to be great, especially when Mike grew up. There was such a shortage of places to play indoors. So, you know, it snows, it rains, it's cold, you can't play. And so for what Mike, I tell you, I hit an overhead at that guy from 5 feet away from the net as hard as I possibly could. He didn't run away, he didn't turn his back. He stuck his racket out. He took all the speed off the ball and played a perfect drop shot. And he was 16 years old. And I said, when he did that, I looked over and I said, wow, you know what? This kid is something special. And he was ridiculously good and ridiculously talented.
How well did he cover the court?
There wasn't one thing Mike did bad. You know, when he was 16, I could maybe take advantage of him because he wasn't strong enough and he couldn't hit a second serve big enough so you could whack it and come in a little bit and pressure him. But as soon as he filled out and matured and got a little stronger, there wasn't one thing. He covered the court well. He was smooth too. Like sometimes people run and they run heavy, but Mike was a glider. He was just there. Wow, how'd he get there? You didn't see it happening. He had great anticipation, a really good first step, and he glided on the court.
Wow. Well, his record against New Mexico opponents, I guess, is spotless. I mean, I'm looking for record books on tennis in our community, and we as the media, forgive us, Coach Gaetz, we didn't cover it extensively like we should have. When we have a young man in town like Mike Velasquez, you were amazing, and all the other New Mexicans that played, Warren Fulgenzi and Otero, and all of them were great. And Mike competed against New Mexico opponents regularly. For the record that you know of, did he ever lose to a New Mexico opponent?
Yeah, I used to beat him when he was 12. But, you know, I have a question for you, Henry. Mike Velasquez is hands down, without a question, the best tennis player that's ever played in New Mexico, the best New Mexico tennis player ever. How come that guy's not in the Hall of Fame? I think he got forgotten about a little bit.
Well, give us time. And that is such an amazing subject that you just brought me today, because he's more than crossed my mind. So heads up, never say never, especially for New Mexico's finest tennis player, youth tennis player ever, or any tennis player that played the game in New Mexico he should be honored and awarded that recognition.
I'd like to nominate him right now. How do I do it?
I think you just did. We'll send you a form and you officially nominate Mike Velasquez for induction into the New Mexico Sports Hall of Fame.
You know what else, Henry? Mike, it's maybe not so much tennis-wise, but Mike and I played a lot. And usually, you know, kind of in tennis, familiarity breeds contempt. You don't want to lose to your friends. And you'll try harder to beat your friend than anybody because you don't want them to have bragging rights. And so Mike and I used to play all the time. And the many times we played, the guy never made a bad call. I never heard Mike argue about a call. I never heard Mike in my whole life say anything bad about any other opponent or kid or anything. He wasn't a trash talking kind of guy. I never heard him say a bad word about anybody. And that always stuck with me about Mike.
Wow. And that was my next question for me. Nice kid, great character, love for his family, and the way he treated you, his friend. Describe Mike in that sort of a situation with family and friends.
Mike was a strange combination. He was a great competitor. He always gave his best on the court, but the guy Mike was a gentle soul. He was quiet. He was soft spoken. He wasn't going to be the guy who wanted to be the center of attention or the life of the party. Mike was he would kind of blend in the background. Mike was a really, really nice, innocent, it's just easy going kid. Just easy to be around. I'd have to ask Minerva. He couldn't have been tough to raise. Who wouldn't
And
think?
let's go now to Minerva, and we'll come back with a question for you so you can get to class here in a few minutes. Coach, let's bring up Minerva Velasquez, the special mom. I mean special because she loved Mike. And Minerva, let's see your picture right now as you come on the screen. You took him all over the country. It was expensive. You and your husband sacrificed daily for your children. How about a description of your son, Minerva? Tell us the story about your young man named Michael Velasquez.
He was easy to raise, he was a good guy. He never got in trouble, ever. And, he was just wonderful, all the time. I remember one time I got a phone call from high school, and they told me that he wasn't going to graduate. And I said, well, why won't he graduate? I want to know why. And they said, well, for one, he's behind 10 books that he needs to read, and he hasn't read them. And I said, well, why don't you give him a chance and let him read the books, And they said, okay, if he can read them in 2 weeks, we have a list here of 10 books. And when 2 weeks came around, he'd read 12 books. He just sat down and just read nonstop, and he was amazed. And he said, oh, that was really good because those books were really great. And he read the books that I recommended, about 5 or 6 of them, because I've always been a big reader. And he loved, his favorite book was, and I think it was because it reminded him of himself. His favorite book was Little Buddha. And I don't know if you guys have ever read that book, but by Herman Hesse, Little Buddha. And it was about a young man that was a prince, and he left home to experience life, and many things happened to him. And come at the end of the book, he has so much knowledge about the world. It's said that that was the life story of actually the story of Buddha. And Mike was like that, he was real absorbent, he absorbed everything around him. That's why he was so quiet. He was real quiet all the time. He was always looking and absorbing. And in the tennis world, he never lost a match to anybody, except, when of course he was little, but as an adult or as a teenager or whatever, he never lost a match to anybody. Not in New Mexico, not in Denver, not in Texas, not in Arizona. The guy was just lethal. He, and he'd always say, if you asked him, Mike, how did you figure all that out? How did you beat that guy? And he's like, well, I don't know, Mom. I just did. He didn't really know. He was just, I think he was just talented. That's all. He had a lot of natural talent, He really didn't know where it came from. He just knew that he was going to do it, and he did it.
At what age did he pick up his racket for the first time?
He was
There's
8.
a story that you went to Kmart and said, and he liked that racket. He said, Mom, this is the one I want. And it wasn't the modern style. It wasn't the latest and the greatest. It was the most humble racket that you could purchase in a store.
Yeah, it
Do you
was 10.
remember that moment?
Yeah, it was $10, and it was a Yamaha. And I sent you a picture of it, I think. And he was 12, and he had his racket with him, and he took a picture of his trophy that he won and his racket. You know, those were his two valuables on that picture. And I thought it was such a nice picture because he had, I don't know what the trophy was, but it was something he was holding. I couldn't make it out. But that photograph, incidentally, was taken by Daniel Mainzer, provided the photograph for that. And Daniel was also one of his friends. And
Now, let me interrupt you here.
yeah.
You sacrificed along with your husband.
Oh, yes.
When he was so young,
Yeah.
go to tournaments all over the country. Tell us
Yeah.
about those experiences and the sacrifices that you and your husband and family went through just to make sure that he could develop and accomplish his dream.
Yes. Well, he didn't, you know, he wanted to play. And once he played around in New Mexico, you know, he said, you know, I'm not going to be going anywhere because I'm stuck. You know, there's no competition here. You know, Mom. And so that's when I started looking into tournaments in and around the Southwest, because at that point I didn't know how it went. You know, I didn't know what you had to do to be ranked or anything. So I started looking into it, and I found out I bought the Southwest guide, and it named all the tournaments, and I wrote to all of them, and they all sent me entry forms for all the tournaments that were going to be, and we filled them all out, and as we went, and Mike was real excited. I noticed this change of attitude when we did that, and then after he started playing, and he wouldn't lose, and you know, he was almost like exhausting because there was no competition, not even in the Southwest.
Did it build his confidence? Did he believe he could
Yes.
play with John McEnroe and Jimmy Connors and the Orm board?
Yes. In fact, when we started traveling, we started because he was #1 in the Southwest, and the 12s, the 14s, the 16s, the 18s. You know, that's 4 seasons. That's years. You know,
When you hear Coach Gaetz describe him as the best young tennis player he's ever seen, what does that mean to you, Minerva?
oh God, you know, it just opens up the wound, you know, because it's true. It's true. You know, he was phenomenal. He really was. He was real intelligent for his age.
Yeah.
It
And
takes
to hear Coach Gaetz describe him as such a nice young man, soft spoken. He was not a hot dog personality, very humble, giving, just a nice young guy. And Coach Gaetz misses that about Michael. And he
Yeah.
praises him for being so humble and so nice. When you heard Coach Gaetz describe his character, what went through your mind?
Well, I whelped up for one. You know, it doesn't take much to get me started, you know, on Mike, because it hurts a lot when you lose a child, you know, and especially Mike. He was a special child,
Yeah,
and
amen.
he was just real special. And
Amen. And Coach Gaetz, let's pull you up before you have to get to class. You're out there on the campus of the University of Pennsylvania, and you hear Minerva talk about her son. I'm close to having tears in my eyes because that's such a love story. Did you see the love story Coach Gaetz with mom and dad and Lauren, his sister, and Jeff, the brother? Could you see that love in her family?
Oh yeah, because it was interesting. So not to be mean to Minerva, but I never really thought Minerva knew anything about tennis. I never saw her. But yet here's somebody that doesn't really know about tennis, but I considered her and her husband like the best tennis parents ever. They would take Mike to a tournament and you know, they're not reviewing every match or telling him to practice harder or on his butt about something and oh Mike, you should have done this or that. I mean, they would show up and all Minerva did was just give her son unconditional love. And she was there all the time for him and just extremely supportive. I never heard her say a negative word. If something didn't go well for Mike, oh, Mike, you should have done this. You should have ran. You know, you hear tennis parents getting on their kids all the time. And so here's a lady that doesn't have any tennis background and didn't really know tennis, but she's a better tennis parent than all of them. And the other thing that Minerva did, I think, is Mike, when he started playing tennis, Mike always looked great, man. They sacrificed. He had nice Fila clothes. I remember Mike used to always wear a Tacchini. And Mike always looked sharp. He wasn't like a little scrub like me playing a pair of blue jeans and cut off t-shirt or something. Mike looked good. He looked control the whole time. And I always thought that, I always thought those are the best tennis parents I've ever seen. Just give your kid unconditional love and let him do it. Support him every way you can. And that's all Minerva did. So the other thing I knew where Mike was a good kid is because usually in competitive situations, kids will talk bad about each other. Oh, he's a cheater. You know, he hooked me. This guy's a jerk to play or whatever. But the thing is, I think you could talk to anybody. I talked to a lot of people. I never, ever heard anybody, parent of another kid or kid, ever say a bad word about Mike. He just wasn't that way. Mike just played. He was like a peaceful flower child who was a savant. He's like that little kid that sits down at the piano at 7 years old and all of a sudden he's playing Mozart and you go, wow, where did it come from? And that's kind of what I thought with Mike. And I remember the first time I really watched Mike play, I had a good friend, Gary Wheeler, who was on the New Mexico tennis team at the time. And Gary graduated. He's maybe top 5 in the Southwest section in the men's rankings. He was a really good male player. And Mike's 15. And Mike beats him at the New Mexico Open. And all of our guys on the team gave Gary such you lost to a 15-year-old. What's wrong with you, you know? And that's when I really first paid attention. I said, wow, this kid is really something. So I got nothing but respect for Minerva the way she raised Mike and her as a tennis parent and everything. She did it. She didn't know what she was doing, but she did it right.
You know, Mike went to heaven early. You wanted him to be a Lobo star and watch him move up. When the day that Michael went to heaven and you knew that we would never see him play again, you were his friend. When you lose a friend like Michael, I mean, how crushing is that for you, Coach?
Cried every day for a week.
Wow. Wow. You can't say it more explicit, any more vivid than that. Coach, I know you have to get on to a class right now, but I want to take you to one more scene. You versus Mike Velasquez in a real tournament. You're dressed to the hilt, so is he. There's a big crowd at center court, and you're playing Mike Velasquez. What was that experience like?
Well, you know what? As a tennis player, I hate this. I just wasn't good enough. You know, I think Mike was the kind of guy, I said earlier, God came down and tapped him on the shoulder and said, "You, my son, you're a tennis player." Really, really hard. But, you know, guys like me were a dime a dozen. There's zillions of guys like me. And Mike wasn't. Mike was special. He was one of a kind. He's a once in a lifetime kind of guy, I think you see. And I was just happy for the time I got to spend with him.
Can you picture, you to kind of preface the story for me, Mike and his mom, Minerva, they're on the highway eating ham and cheese sandwiches and drinking orange juice or water or soda pop, and they're driving long distances. Coach Gaetz, what do you know about that story? And then I'll get that from Minerva as well.
Well, I better let Minerva tell this one. Mike and I made a road trip to Dallas for the National Indoor one year with Minerva, and it was a great time. And you spend a bunch of time in a car with the kid, and you get to know him well. And I don't know. I let Minerva tell that story. She spent a lot more time in the car with Mike, but I love the kid. The last time I saw Mike, I was in Albuquerque, and it was over Christmas vacation. It was Christmas Eve, I think. And I'm driving down Central Avenue. I came back, and I see this guy walking with a gas can with a big beard, and obviously he ran out of gas. I pull over, and I say, "Hey, do you need a ride to your car?" And the guy got in the car, and he said, "Dave." And I said, "Yeah." I looked over. I didn't recognize him. And he said, "It's Mike Velasquez." And I said, "Wow," I couldn't believe it. So it was just pure fluke, but I gave him a ride over to his car and filled it up with gas. And that's Mike. And when I heard the news, I couldn't even believe it. I just couldn't believe it. So,
well, I'm saying,
yeah, I miss Mike.
Well, we all miss Mike. I didn't know him like you guys knew him for sure, but I knew of him. And I take, before you go to class, Coach, we'll take to heart your nomination that he be inducted into New Mexico Sports Hall of Fame. Answering the layman terms question, does he really deserve it? Might be a rhetorical question to all of us now, but answer that question.
100%. If you ask anybody, I mean, if Mike, I don't know, there's a lot of ifs with Mike, but I tell you what, 100%, the best tennis player that's ever played in New Mexico is Mike Velasquez. And you know what? Maybe the second best tennis player that ever played in New Mexico was a guy named Mark Kyle. And Mark Kyle was a great tennis player. Mark Kyle beat Pete Sampras on a grass court. Was number one in the world. His name's Mark Kyle. And I used to watch Mike beat him like a redheaded stepchild over and over and over. And in my mind, I think any tennis player, there's nobody that was as good as Mike that ever came out of the state. And I think that qualifies you to get in. Plus I don't know, you got to look at his trophy room. Guy won everything in sight. So if that doesn't get you in, I don't know what you got to do.
Well, all we can say to you is thank you from the bottom of our heart for stepping up for your close friend, your former player, Mike Velasquez, today. In closing, before I finish the show with Minerva, do you have anything to offer besides what we've already talked about that I did not ask you, but you truly want to express?
Yeah, I miss Mike, and I still think about him. And, you know, time heals everything, and you think less and less. I told you I cried every day for a week, and then after a month, I think about it once in a while, and then it kind of just, you know, goes away after a while. But I still think about Mike, and everybody of my era that ever lived in New Mexico knows Mike, and they all respected him. And that guy was phenomenal kid and a phenomenal tennis player.
By the way, before we go, how's your tennis team doing at the University of Pennsylvania?
If I had Mike Velasquez, we'd win the Ivy League championship.
Amen. Coach Gaetz, be careful. God bless you. Thank you for being with us today.
You're
Love
welcome.
you, Dave.
Bye, Minerva.
Bye.
And don't speed. Don't be late to class. And we apologize for keeping you so late, Coach Gaetz, but what an honor to have you today.
All right. Thank you, Henry. Bye-bye.
Take care. Wow. What a man. A friend of Michael Velasquez. Let's go back to Minerva, Mike's mom, and she's in California. To hear all those kind words, Minerva, they've got to touch your heart.
Absolutely. I'm wiping the tears, you know. It was just, it was heaven sent, you know, to have him as a son, you know. It was, I was blessed, you know. I really was. Absolutely blessed.
To have Coach Guest suggest that he be inducted into New Mexico Sports Hall of Fame, how did you react to that?
I feel the same way. I really do. Especially because he won the Olympics, you know. Because that was a hard one for him to have won, you know. He worked so hard. I think they were in training for 2 weeks, and they had a layer of tournaments to determine who was going to win. There were so many kids that entered, you know, and so they had to narrow down the competition, and he made it to the end, and he won it. And you know, to me, that's the biggest accomplishment to me, because it's the Olympics. And that was the year that the Olympics, you know, stopped being or accepting tennis. Tennis wasn't part of the Olympics since 1920. And in 1920, they decided that it was not going to be part of the Olympics. So the year that Mike played, which was 1983, they said that whatever happened during this tournament and this happening here, they decided that if that went well, it would be accepted. And that was the year that it was accepted back. And every day, and now every year, they have the Olympics, and there is a tennis champion every year. But Mike was the first one. Absolutely. To me, that's the greatest.
Now let's move to his character. A mom knows it all. She sees it all.
Yeah.
You gave Michael tough love. So did Dad, because you kept him on the straight and narrow throughout his life.
Yes.
And like Coach Guest described, he never met anybody nicer, more humble, more family oriented.
Yes.
And just, he was a tough competitor, but he was out there leading the handshakes at the end of the competition.
Yep.
Go further as we wrap up our story to describe the Michael we all should have known.
Yes. For one, the reason that we started playing tennis was he was real energetic, super energetic. And we actually started playing tennis because we didn't want him to end up in trouble. Because at that age, a lot of kids began to experiment with drugs. And Mike was so vivacious. I'd seen a lot of kids go bad. And I knew a lot of people that had kids that went bad. And that's why we started playing tennis. And it was a good thing. And it was so good, you know, that to discover that Mike was great at it. You know, but during the years, we discovered that Mike was great at everything. He was a great basketball player. He was a great tennis player, but he was even more phenomenal as a golf player.
Wow.
He played baseball. And he was good at everything, Henry. There was nothing. I don't know if you know about that hacky sack.
Yeah.
That's how he warmed up.
Gee.
I know. He loved sports. He just loved it all. He was one of a kind, and he loved it all, and was good at everything.
And he loved music.
And
And
he loved music.
loved
Absolutely.
food. And he loved
Oh,
cooking.
yeah.
How
He
about
loved.
that part of him?
Oh, he loved his music. He loved his music. And after his father died, he discovered a song by the Foo Fighters called "My Hero," and that was he turned us on. He turned the family on to that song. He said, "Listen to this song. This is Dad's song for me, My Hero."
Wow.
If you listen to that song, the words are. That's how he felt, and it's pretty phenomenal. And I'm just so proud of him. He did a lot, emotionally for the family. We all love him dearly.
Tell me about his association, his friendship with his dad as well. It was a big love story going on there. Share
Yes.
that with us.
He loved his father. Oh, he loved his father. And he was always sad that his father couldn't be at all his games because of the way he worked, But Mike always said, my husband, Mike, always said, you take him wherever you need to, and I'll stay here and make the money. So we can afford to take you guys everywhere. So, he was a great guy too, So Mike had a good example there.
But they loved each other.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Just, after his father died, Mike died too. There's no other way to put it.
Wow.
Because he just hung everything up and just was real sad all the time.
Jeez.
And I believe that it was depression that he died of. He was just depressed all the time because of.
I can just picture you and Mike on the highway eating those ham and cheese sandwiches.
That's funny because I never cooked ham. We always made turkey.
Oh, was it turkey?
It was turkey.
But I
Yeah.
bet it was enjoyable for you,
Yeah,
knowing that you're making this young man experience the ultimate in happiness as a youth. And there
Right.
you are, Mom, driving down the road. How many cars did you wear out?
Oh, God. I think 3. Oh, gosh. Yeah. A Jeep and 2 Mercedes.
Gee. And
Yeah.
there you are at the tournament. What
Of
kind
course,
of
they were vintage. The Mercedes were vintage, but they were in tip-top shape. Besides being a great dad, my husband was a great mechanic.
beautiful
He told me
story.
once, he said, if I could be a perfect husband, what would, in your eyes, what would you consider a great husband? And I said, a good mechanic. Because we were always, taking the cars in to get fixed, and I thought, well, if we had a mechanic in the family. And, he became the best mechanic ever.
Wow.
And we never had problems ever again.
And ladies and gentlemen, these were long trips.
Yeah.
And Minerva was always there with her son. And Dad was always working to make sure that Mom was with her son heading to another tournament. That story is a book, and I'm going to write it. And I get tears in my eyes when I hear these stories about you and Michael on the road eating these sandwiches, heading to another long drive to another big tournament of which he would win. Now this is going to sound crazy, but you never saw him lose.
No, I never did.
That's amazing in itself. What do you think about that?
I love it. I love it. I really do. I love it.
Wow.
It was like a dream, I always felt like I was in a dream, I just, I like to take care of him, he needed to eat right, so I always made sure that he ate right. and had the best, you know. And
You know, I
the
don't want to re-break your heart, but we and all the moms and dads out there who have children today, and all the moms and dad are doing the same thing that you did, sacrificing for their children. What's your advice to young parents out there who recognize their children have certain talents? Now its decision has to come soon. What do they do about the child's wishes as Mike came to you with his?
well, you have to listen to them for one. You know, if they want to if they want to play, you know, they should play. If they have a desire to excel, they will excel on their own. But they have a right to try everything that their little heart desires, because you never know. You just never know, you know. If you might be good at this, but they might be good at that, you know, and just listen to your children. Pay attention. Pay attention to them.
As
And
we conclude our program today, not to be overly dramatic, but just to be real, how much do you recall your moments with Mike? And when you see his picture, what comes to mind?
I always pray, you know. I always pray for him, and I know he's with the Lord, you know, and I'm glad for him, because I know I'm going to join him someday, you know, and I'm ready, you know. I stay ready, and you just never know, Henry. One day you may go to sleep and never wake up, you know. You just don't know, you know. So you just got to be good, you know. Be good to people, you know, and do this. When you do Facebook, you know, just be good to your friends, you know, and be kind. And
Yeah.
incidentally, I love all my Facebook friends. They're so wonderful. And
Well, you've really touched our life today, Minerva. Thank you
thank
for
you.
your
You're welcome.
shining example of how to be
Thank
a
you.
mom to
Thank
the
you.
fullest. And
Yes.
if you
Thanks.
could share with us as we leave here today, what was the expression of love when you would see your son, he would see you, or you would say bye to him as he went to practice? What was the exchange of emotion with you and your boy?
A big old bear hug. Just a big old bear hug. And I'd always kiss him, and he'd always go, you know. He didn't want those kisses, you know, not for me anyway. But he had girlfriends galore, you know, to do that. So, you know,
Handsome young man.
yes, he was. He really was. He was cutie. And he was a sweet one.
Well, as we wrap this up today, all I can say is a sincere thank you to you,
You're welcome. You're welcome, Henry. Thank you. Thank
Mama
you.
Minerva. Wow. And blessed with his close friend, former coach,
I
and
know.
an idol, all wrapped into one, and Coach David Gaetz.
I know. He was the best. He really was. He was. I'll tell you what. Those matches between them were awesome. Awesome. The competition, they'd go at each other, and it was just beautiful.
Well,
The show.
Minerva,
Hmm.
I'm telling you, beautiful is the word to this story. It's a story about love. It's a story
Hmm.
about beauty. All those great adjectives
Yeah.
describe this story today.
Yeah.
And it hits my heart. Everyone that's watching this story today, it's hit their heart as well. And a big lesson is learned today. Listen, watch over, get involved with your own children.
Yeah.
Don't ever miss a minute of what they need. Take them on the road wherever they want to get. Buy them that Kmart tennis racket. And that was was that his choice? He had his choice because I'm sure you were going to buy the best racket on the shelf, but he picked this one.
Yeah, he did. He picked it, and you know, Henry, as luck would have it, as he got better and better and better, he had free rackets, free tennis shoes, free clothes, free everything. He had his pick of whatever he wanted. That's why he looked so good all the time. He got everything free. You know, his clothes, his socks, his shoes, rackets. His rackets were $250 each. Do you think we could afford that?
Wow.
God, that, you know, and he had 6 of them. No way. We couldn't do that.
Well,
But
welcome back to New Mexico via Zoom,
thank
via
you.
the new studio here at ProView. And of course, we're going on a big TV station, and we are going to appear on worldwide internet and also the internet power of ProView Network and channel 26.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
I think, is that right? We have 11 minutes and 22 seconds left. We do? Hey, well, let's talk about you and your new life in California for about 10 minutes here, and describe, you have a daughter as well, and her feelings about her brother, and your other son, Jeff, and his feelings
Oh,
about Michael before we go.
they love their big brother. And they miss him, you know, and protect his legacy. They really do. And they are also in the mind that Mike should be in the Hall of Fame, you know, and as well as me, you know. So if I need to fill out a form, I will, but I don't see how, why, you know, when Mike has done enough, he did enough, you know, and I think New Mexico should say thank you to Mike. I really do.
You know, we honor the best basketball players, the best football players
Yeah.
ever in New Mexico history. But we
Yes.
haven't done that to tennis players. It's about time. What do you think, Minerva?
I think so. I think so. I think so. Oh yeah.
When you complimented his music choices, give me an example of some of that modern music that he loved, and you heard it at first, and you said, "Wow, that's not my 1960s oldies. That's something I've never heard." But Mike has a special ear for music and an appreciation for
Yeah.
bands and vocalists and all that. Share with us that part of Mike.
Oh God, he was so in love with Bjork. It was unreal. He loved her. And actually, I took him to Phoenix to see her. She opened up for the band U2, and we went, and he stood backstage just like he stood back there where the trucks are and everything, you know, where they come in. And he stood back there like a cute little boy, dude, just like a little kid, waiting for his idol to find, you know, to see if he could see her. And he did. He got to meet her. So, you know, that was a highlight. He was so happy. He was the happiest kid I ever saw. He was just like a little kid with a new toy. And he
And
would
an
play,
autograph and a photograph.
yeah, he loved her, and then he loved the Foo Fighters. Oh my God. And he loved Led Zeppelin. And that's vintage. But, you know, he loved them. And he loved Pink Floyd, which, you know, and then he loved things I never heard of before, like, oh God, there was a group called the 77s. I don't know if you've ever heard of, but I never had. And but they're good. And then there's the Pixies. They're phenomenal. They're great. And there's just, oh God, endless music.
And what music did you like growing up?
Oh, I myself, I like Tori Amos, um, Patti Smith. Um, I like Pink Floyd too, and I like the Foo Fighters. I've really come to really like them, and I like Nirvana too. And the reason I like Nirvana is that my daughter was in a punk band when she was a teenager, and their band got pretty good, and they almost made it, but they opened up for a lot of famous bands. They went on to become famous, and so that was another eye-opening experience, if you can imagine. And I had to accompany her to these concerts because I didn't want her to, I don't know, I was scared, because she was so cute, and she was at these punk concerts, and it scared me. So I went there to take care of her, and that was a lot of fun too, There was, raising kids is a complicated thing, it's not an easy thing, but these days she's real mellow. She writes music. She's still into music and writes music and sings. She's a phenomenal singer, and she writes songs for everything and everybody. She's so wonderful. I love her.
Creativity runs through the bloodstream of your family.
Yes, that's true. And Jeff is that way too. He loves music, and he doesn't play any instruments. He doesn't do anything. And the one thing I wanted to mention about Mike is, before I forget, before he started playing tennis, he was a violinist. He was #1 seed in the Junior Symphony in Albuquerque. So,
Before we leave, I wanted to spend the last 5 minutes talking about his brother Jeff.
yes.
Jeff and Michael were very, very close.
Yes, they were. Yes. Very. Mm-hmm.
Describe that.
Oh boy, Jeff, Mike used to call him Chicle. I don't know if you know what that is. That's bubble gum. You know how bubble gum sticks to the bottom of your shoe? You call it Chicle?
Yes.
Well, that's what Mike used to call Jeff, because he was always showing up at the most opportune times to see his brother, He would just want to be with him, and so he knew a lot. Jeff grew up knowing a lot about Mike. And in fact, he knows more than I do. He knows so many things, because he was there. He experienced a lot of Mike's victories right along with Mike, because sometimes I couldn't go. And him and Mike would be together, and they had each other, and they were a pair. I once in a while I'd make fun of them and call them names like Jeff and Mutt, and they got a kick out of that, especially Mike. Hey, Jefe, that's what he called him, Jefito.
You're quite a storyteller.
Oh.
And you've expressed a lot of love for your children today that's grabbed the hearts of all of us today, Minerva.
Thanks.
Very, very special story. I do
Thank
a
you.
lot of special stories, and I look for the heart of the story. Since we started this program today, it's been nothing but heart and love. And that was the way I prayed it would be today. And we could not have found a better guest supporting cast than Coach David Gaetz. And we
Yes.
could not have ever heard a more descriptive story from you, the mama. This has been a heaven sent opportunity in my career, in Henry T's career. And I've interviewed Muhammad Ali and all the greats.
Thank you.
But this story hits my heart, top, sideways, bottom, every way. And as I researched this story, countless times I've had tears in my eyes learning about the character and love that came out of your son as you lived his life. God bless Mike Velasquez.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. He deserves that. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Henry.
What's your
Thank you so
final
much.
say today as we wrap this story up in our final 2 minutes?
God bless you. And thank you so much. And I hope it's not the last time. Thank you.
No, we'll do it again. There'll be a part 2. We
Yeah.
have to. We're in a new studio today. We had different plans for this story today. And please forgive us, ladies and gentlemen. We had some great pictures of Mike, but the next time this runs, it'll be tomorrow, or it'll be rerun countless amount of times, and you'll see this handsome young man in action, and you'll hear some of his music as well. So we have more work to do on this great story today. It'll just get better and better. And again, you can see it on ProView Internet. You can see it on Henry T. GameFace Live. And you can see it on Big Channel 26 all around New Mexico. So this story is going to get its share and more from all these vehicles. So, man, thousands of people will be blessed by your story, Minerva. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Henry.
Well, as we wrap it up today, ladies and gentlemen, here's our sponsors. Amistoy Drywall. God bless Pierre Amistoy. What a great man. What a great leader. And his 2 sons, Adam and Pierre Jr., 2 great athletes. And Dad, back in his day, was a great athlete at Valley High School, the same school that Mike Velasquez attended. And the tennis court is right near the baseball field. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us. I'm Henry T. And this story will get better and better. See you next time. Wow. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you. God bless all of you. We'll see you all very soon. Again, special thanks to Minerva Velasquez and Coach David Guest for being with us today. Have a great day. Take care. Wow. That's a motivational experience, no question. Thank you, Minerva, Michael's beautiful mom. Big heart. Man, 2 kinds of people in this world, givers and takers. His mother, Minerva, great big giver. Thank you, Coach David Getz, University of Pennsylvania head tennis coach, former Lobo coach. Wow. The words so sincere. Man, I got to interview Michael back in the day, Channel 7. And you were mesmerized when you watched him play so smooth. And he had a velocity on that ball. And how he did it, nobody knows. He would hit that ball as hard as he could. And it's coming looking like a fastball, stop in midair and die just over the net. Impossible to return. This story motivates me. There's more stories like this out there. If you have one, call me 505-907-4523. because I want to air that story that you know about that I don't know about yet, right here on this big TV station. So do that for me. This one, this one grabs my heart. And when you see the pictures, the action pictures, just the still pictures of him just looking sharp. And we had in those days a way to get you the video on the audio and bring back, maybe I can find one of the archives of one of the TV stations I interviewed Michael at, and to hear him talk, you'd hear humility, fun, just love life. He loved his family. What a story about Michael and his mother Minerva and dad and Jeff the brother, Lauren the sister. Talent everywhere. An amazing story. Thank you to Emma Story Drywall. Thank you to Rex the Lumber, Richie Tabin out there, Indigo Mortgage, Ben Lucero, Kevin at the canteen. What a day. Thank you for being with us today. And stay tuned. This network, this TV show is moving up every day in popularity. God bless you. Take care. We'll see you on Monday. Be with us. See you then.